All right, welcome everybody. This is the Reality Czars podcast, and I'm your only host today, Nate. I don't know what Tony's doing, and we have the great Vince Fields on. Vince, you wrote an interesting book about some interesting topics, man. I'm really into it. I'm sorry, what the hell is it called? When you astral projection, yeah, man, that stuff is wild, dude. This is the first time on our show. Do you want to tell our audience a little bit about yourself and where they can find you?
Yeah, sure. So earlier this year, I published a book called Astral Projection and Lucid Dreaming: Spiritual Revelations and Out-of-Body Experiences in Higher Dimensions. And this book basically contains a lot of my experiences with astral projection, lucid dreaming, and you can find it on Amazon.com. And yeah, I'd just like to share some of my experiences with you guys. Maybe give you some tips and tricks if you're interested in having these experiences yourself.
Yeah, cool, dude. Like, so I told you at the beginning, when we were talking before, that I was going to tell you my one experience that I had as far as astral projection, and I actually think that I might have a couple. I've definitely had outer body experiences when I was a kid. Like, I definitely had those, and that was an interesting feeling. And I tried to describe it to people, and they thought it was nuts. But the one astral projection experience that I have is not me experiencing it. It's that I used to work at this giant fucking corporation, and this guy used to come up to me all the time. He was a tall, slender black man with dreadlocks, and he had a crush on me. And he would come and talk to me every day. And he had black nail polish, and he always had like a pendant of an owl on him. And thinking back on it now, I think there's definitely some cult shit going on with the big owl and the stuff. And because I was a total normie back then, I didn't know how to look for that kind of symbolism. But he would come and tell me about his astral projection, and he had a book on it, and he would read it every day, like on his break. And he would tell me that he would come and watch me while I was in my room at home and stuff. And I was like, dude, can you not do that? He's like, you're just so handsome and terrible things like that. So needless to say, if I had thought he could actually do it at the time, I might have like punched him or something. But like, I thought he was like, this guy's crazy. But now I'm kind of more open minded. He could be watching me right now. I have no idea. I haven't talked to him in a few years. So, um, do you want to
That's
give us
funny,
the
man.
basics on on astral projection? Like, how would you describe it? What is it exactly for? I mean, I think my audience knows what the hell this is, but like, let's talk about it.
Well, it is essentially a type of out-of-body experience in which your consciousness enters higher dimensions of reality. And these higher dimensions are commonly called the astral dimensions. And essentially, reality exists in an entire spectrum of different levels or layers of dimensions. And a dimension is essentially a particular level of reality that exists at a particular uh, range of frequencies. And so you can consider the physical dimension, this physical world, to be like the base level of our system of reality. And so during astral projection, you project into higher dimensions. And so, hearing this story about your your ex coworker, um, I mean, I would be suspicious of it, just having the knowledge of astral projection myself. Um, because the thing is that these out of body experiences don't take place in the physical dimension, in the physical world. You're
Okay.
tapping into other dimensions. And there are similarities between some of these dimensions with the physical world. And typically, the closer the dimension is to the physical dimension, um, the more similar it is to the physical world. And there almost seems to be a type of um, reflection, an energetic reflection cast into these higher dimensions. So consider the dimension um, just slightly higher than the physical dimension. Well, that will appear almost identical to the physical world, and you'll see essentially a reflection of people uh, alive in this physical world, but you're not actually perceiving the physical dimension. So it is possible to observe things happening in this physical world, but you're not actually directly perceiving the physical dimension. So there may be aspects that are a little different, and the higher the dimension you get, the farther away from the physical dimension you project, the more different the reality becomes. And so when you start to access these really higher dimensions, it's totally different from anything you could imagine, using
That's
physical concepts.
fascinating. That's really interesting, man. So is it almost like okay, so but there's similarities if you're let's say you're one dimension away, things are can be very similar, but there are going to be some differences. That's fascinating because I think about like the MK Ultra stuff. I think about like what the Russians and the American government were trying to do to each other, trying to spy on each other, right? That they would like try to send some like psychics to like explore the KGB and find out what they were up to and things like that. And that's kind of like what you get in what's that TV show Stranger Things, right? Where they were trying to like have her astral project into the Kremlin, right? They were trying to have her like listen to the Russian agents and stuff like that. That's fascinating, but it's not going to be the same. You're saying that there might be some similarities, and
Yeah,
because I
well,
know another thing that I'm sorry, I'm going jumping all over the place. Go ahead, and I'll jump after.
what you're referring to with the CIA and things like that, that's commonly called remote viewing, and that's a little different from
Remote
astral
viewing.
projection,
Okay, gotcha.
because that's more of like an ESP or a psychic ability, where you basically retrieve information from this physical dimension, and it's more of a pure
Gotcha.
mental type of ability. So your consciousness isn't entering other dimensions. So that's a little different.
Gotcha. Does that take a specific type of skill? Like maybe not everybody can do that, but maybe everybody can astral project, or is this just a small population that can do either?
Um, well, I don't have much experience with remote viewing personally. I mean, I've read books and researched it. Um, but yeah, there are, different, processes involved in terms of, your mind and your consciousness and what takes place during these experiences. And the thing is with astral projection, this is actually a natural um, phenomenon that takes place every time we go to sleep. Our
Mm,
consciousness projects into other levels of reality, but typically we're unaware of that because, we're unconscious. We fall asleep. And essentially, a conscious astral projection or out of body experience is simply being able to maintain awareness as your body falls asleep. And then you experience this natural process of the consciousness projecting into these higher dimensions. And so, yeah, like remote viewing, this isn't going to be like a natural phenomenon like that. So it will probably take a lot more like development and maybe some kind of natural
yeah.
uh, ability.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, another question I have is like, so how real are these other dimensions as far as like, are there like things that live there that like live their day to day lives, like they're on this side? So like maybe when we astral project, we're going to this other dimension. Do we affect like other beings' lives and stuff? Do we screw things up maybe? Or do you think like, say I have like a really violent dream where I like kill a village or something terrible like that? Did I actually do that? Is like
Okay, so
some other place like in torment.
I gotcha. Well, now we're getting into the difference between astral projection and lucid dreaming, uh,
Mm,
and even just dreaming. And so, essentially, dreams and lucid dreams take place in a type of subconsciously created reality, whereas astral projection um, takes place in these dimensions which exist beyond our own mind, beyond our own, subconscious mind and influence. So these are there um, always. Whereas, yeah, the lucid dreaming environment, the dreams, this is the subconscious mind creating this environment. And so, like during these experiences, lucid dreams, you have a lot of control over the experience. Like you can manifest anything you want, have any experience you want, essentially. And that's not so much the case with astral projection because your subconscious mind, it's not creating the experience. and so it doesn't have as much influence over the experience.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. I've definitely had experience with lucid dreaming. I still kind of can if I don't. I haven't tried to in a long time. Tried to like take control of a dream, but I definitely have. Um, I've definitely done that in the past, which is fascinating. So that's in my head. That's like a projection going on. Like I'm watching a movie almost, and then I can like. How would
Um,
you explain lucid dreaming exactly?
okay, well, in my experience, these all take place not just in your head, but you are in a type of non-physical reality. And so it is essentially a type of out-of-body experience. The difference is where exactly your consciousness is situated um, in non-physical reality, because there are many different levels and layers, and you can be in multiple levels simultaneously and not even be aware of it, because the way our conscious mind currently works is like we have one particular focus, and imagine trying to perceive multiple levels of experience simultaneously. uh, it would seem almost impossible. It is possible to do that, and I've done that, and I can do that, but it's really hard to process everything, especially as you start to experience more than two levels simultaneously. And um, and so what happens is you can be in the astral dimension, but you're simultaneously experiencing projections of the subconscious mind almost superimposed over that astral reality. And so your experience is, you're essentially in a completely different level of experience.
Interesting. Okay. I'll tell you another thing about. I wish I remembered my coworker's name. He was an interesting guy. In fact, if I still knew his name, I'd probably try to get him on the show and talk to him about this. But he would also. So there, like a few years ago, there was a little boy that went missing from his school, and everyone kind of suspects his stepmom for killing him. His name was Kyron Horman, and no one ever found him. And so he was like, he was trying to solve the case doing astral projection. He was trying to I don't know like I don't know. Yeah. Anyways, is that a useful tool? Can you actually solve things like that? And like,
Well, I would imagine that remote viewing would be more in line with that particular goal,
hmm,
um, you know, retrieving information about the physical world. But, you know, in astral projection, you can, access these higher dimensions in which you have a connection with a higher level of consciousness, and through this higher level of consciousness flows um, knowledge and insight and truth about um, the nature of reality. And so you can gain uh, insights, real true insights from these experiences as well. So I don't doubt that it's possible to obtain information about this physical world through these experiences.
that's interesting. I'm sorry. In the background, you're going to hear my cat yelling. For some reason, he won't shut up. Uh, uh, but so let me see here. That's fascinating, man. And I do think about that. Like I think some terrible things like can have lasting effects on our reality, and I think in the dimensions around us. Like there's a certain part of the Bible where it says that like when someone is like murdered or something, the blood, like some terrible atrocity happens. This is like the blood cries out and kind of like screams. Like so, there's like this, there's like a level of like trauma that happens when something terrible happens. And so I almost wonder if like you astral projected to that stepmom, like, or where the murder happened. I wonder if you would be able to like visibly see something like you could see that something's off, like something terrible happened or something. I don't know. Not that that's evidence. You can't put that in a court, but I don't know. That's fascinating. Uh, so tell me some of your experiences with astral projection. I'm really curious about this stuff and like, what, like, yeah, okay, just go. Sorry,
Sure,
I asked too
sure.
many questions.
Well, I started doing this when I was 14 years old, which was 22 years ago. And so my first experiences were pretty standard. I would float out of my body. I would,
Did you do
see
this
the,
on purpose? Sorry, or did this just kind of happen naturally?
yeah, it was intentional. Um,
Intentional. Okay.
I I came across a website back then about astral projection, and it was my introduction to the concept, to the practice, and I thought it was so cool. I wanted to do it myself, and I found a technique, and within a week I was out of my body. And so yeah, in these early days, I was projecting into the lower dimensions, which is pretty typical. It usually takes a bit of practice and development with this practice to be able to access the higher dimensions. And so the lower dimensions, like I mentioned before, typically look a lot like the physical world. A lot of times they're dark, so like it seems like it's always night. And so I would float out of my body. I would see my room around me. It would look pretty much the same, and I would, float out of my window or through the wall, and just fly around exploring. I had no particular goal or intention. I just wanted to see what was out there, in these early days. And it wasn't until a little bit later that I started to actually, um, you know, make goals for my travels and try to really, um, penetrate deep into discovering, certain things. And so one interesting and for me frightening aspect about my initial experiences was that I would often encounter shadow people or shadow beings, and they would just be standing right next to me as I would float out of my body. And yeah, they were really frightening. And in the beginning, they would scare me right back into my body. And over time, I started to realize they weren't going to hurt me. It seemed like they just wanted to scare me for whatever reason. And so I learned to essentially just ignore them and continue my journeys. And with time, it seemed they existed in like the lowest dimensions. And so with time, I began to project directly into higher dimensions. And so I would completely bypass uh, the the realities that they exist in, and I stopped encountering them. But yeah, that was it's always shocking to see something like that for the first time, especially because I didn't expect it. And these things were huge, like 7 feet tall, just like sinister looking.
That was what I was going to ask. What did they look like?
Yeah, just like a huge dark like silhouette. Like they didn't have a really clear form or outline. It was like a little blurry almost. And a lot of times they would just be standing there, just facing me. But sometimes they would come at me like they were trying to grab me or something. And yeah, I never really had any communication with them.
That's what I was going to ask as well. Did you ever try to communicate with them? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like they never really tried to communicate with me, and I didn't get the sense that they were like overly intelligent entities.
Hmm.
Um, you know, I've had many experiences with many other types of beings out of my body, and I've had communications, and I got a real sense of intelligence and purpose from a lot of other types of beings, but not from these shadow beings.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean that was you're answering all my questions before I asked them. So I was going to ask about other entities that you've met. That's fascinating. Can you describe a few of these guys, like
Yeah,
particular ones that left a lasting effect? or said something that you like carried with you.
Hmm. I've had a lot of experiences with entities that look like aliens, like
Interesting.
gray
Like the classic gray.
aliens. Uh-huh.
Interesting.
Particularly one group that had a light orange skin, and they essentially stalked me for quite some time. I would I would shift out of my body, and they would be just there around me. Sometimes just one or two, and sometimes a whole group of them, like surrounding my bed. And uh, these guys were pretty sinister. Like they radiated with this energy that just felt evil. And um, yeah, this was way more frightening than the shadow beings, because I could tell like these guys had a purpose, and you know, I could tell their intentions weren't good. And it took a while before I was able to be comfortable enough around them where I allowed communication to take place. Um, but yeah, I had some creepy experiences with them. Like this one time, um, well, I'll give a little pretext to this one particular experience. Sometimes you will project from the physical dimension into the astral dimension, but you won't actually be separated from your body. So, essentially, the projection of your consciousness takes place before your astral body separates from the physical body. So, you'll be laying in meditation, and then you'll enter this really deep state, and your consciousness will tap into the astral dimension. So then you'll be laying in bed, but you'll be perceiving the astral dimension, and this is essentially sleep paralysis. A lot of people have this,
Hmm.
and a lot of people will say, "Oh, I saw a shadow person or an alien or a demon during sleep paralysis," and a lot of times they don't realize they're actually seeing these entities in the astral dimension. They're not looking into the physical dimension anymore. And so during a lot of these experiences, I'll see these aliens, and so this one time, this alien was over me, like standing over me, and he bent over and reached his hand down into my mouth and its arm, all the way into my throat, like almost like penetrating into my stomach. Like his whole arm was just like down my esophagus, and this wasn't my physical body. This was like
Yeah.
another dimension, but I felt it. It was so real, and it was such a freaky thing. And
We
you
don't
know,
know their biology all the way. Let's hope that that was his arm.
yeah, and I'm lucky he went in through that hole and not another. But I mean, I'm dead serious, and something really creepy about these particular entities was
Was he
that.
one of the gray, one of the orange gray guys?
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yep. They seem to be almost mechanical in a sense. Um, like
Hmm.
their movements tended to be really like jerky and stiff and just unnatural, almost like they had a robotic element to them. Like sometimes I would enter the astral dimension, and I'd have one of these aliens just looking at me straight in the face, like bent over, right in my grill, and its head would be jerking like side to side, it like it had some kind of a twitch or something. Really unsettling, and
So when you've communicated with these guys, have what did you feel like their intention was? Because you said that you felt like it was a negative intention. Have they ever like communicated with you and told you like kind of like what their intentions are? Like
uh,
were they negative or were they just kind of misunderstood?
well, um, during my communications with them, I got two things out of them. One, um, they're after knowledge, learning, understanding, and two is that they track me, and they showed me some technology that they have. They showed me technology they have for like accumulating um, knowledge, and they show me this other technology they use to track me, and I assume to track many other people as well. And they're not tracking my physical body; they're tracking my astral body, and it kind of makes sense because they always seem to know exactly when I would be having an out of body experience because they would be there. And so I never I never got the idea that they were, positive entities. And from the communications, I didn't get anything negative from them either. Um, I guess more just neutral, you can say. It didn't seem like they had positive intentions. And depending on your perspective, um, their actions, you know, could be considered, you know, negative in the sense that perhaps their purpose doesn't really respect or give consideration to other entities. They're just after what they want, and
They sound like humans to me.
yeah, sure. So yeah,
Yeah.
like from the perspective of an animal here on Earth, like a human can seem evil, and that's how it could work with these guys too. To us, they seem evil because they abduct us. They would pull me out of my body, like against my will, and yeah, they don't seem to care much.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. They don't. I mean, I think about humans using like why in the hell do we need to know if lipstick can hurt someone's eyeball? So like we rub lipstick in a rabbit's eye just to see what happens and things like that. Yeah. This is all for knowledge and things like that. So I mean, yeah, the Greys, their intentions just sound a lot like humans. Like for science, there's not a lot of empathy in science, and sometimes we need that, I guess, and then because we need to know certain things, but also, the science can be pretty dark.
Yeah, but on the other hand, I've had encounters with other types of entities that looked like aliens, different groups of aliens, you can say. And from some of these, they were they were really advanced, really intelligent, and really um, empathetic. Um,
Would you say that these guys like so? I don't know. There's no way to describe the higher, I guess, realms. But like, so where would you have put? So out of 100, where were the orange guys at? Like, like so these more empathic entities that you're reaching, are they at even higher levels of consciousness than these orange gray guys? Is there something to that? It's like I mean, the more evolved, kinder, more empathic, are they at these highest levels and things like that? Or
yeah, exactly. That's essentially how it works, right? The nature and the quality of your own consciousness will be attuned with particular levels of these higher dimensions, right? And yeah, so um, in these higher realms, you will encounter entities that reflect that higher state of consciousness. And so, yeah, um, I've had experiences with certain entities that have revealed things to me about um, who I was in past lives and other lives, you know, and yeah, I would I would experience a telepathic link from these entities, and it seemed like knowledge and information and even memories and experience were like directly downloaded into my consciousness. And so like just in an instant, I would I would be bombarded with all of this knowledge, these memories, and it was like an instant understanding of an aspect of myself and my own consciousness, my own experience that I was like blocked off from before. And yeah, some of these experiences are just beyond words, incredible.
Interesting, man. Yeah, that's really fascinating. Let me see. I had a bunch of questions here for you. Let's see here. What do you? Okay, I guess that's what I was going to get to next. Is something like, um, do you believe in God? A God? Has this affected your thoughts? Like since this has this like strengthened your belief in a God, or has not? Tell me, like, do you think that there's some highest realm up there where there actually could be a creator or something that would be like God, or is this all like what is this? What where are we? What do we live in?
Yeah, I mean, this is from my firsthand experience, and when you start to access these dimensions that are really high up there, well, essentially, the higher you get in the spectrum, the more of these revelations you experience firsthand. Um, and so, in these highest dimensions, you'll experience a direct connection, like a unification um, with God. And yes, I've experienced the fact that uh, you know God is real. There's a God. There's a Creator, and you experience the nature. It's like you for that experience, you're sharing like this energy, this consciousness, and it's just beyond words. But essentially all the typical things you'll hear from someone who tries to describe what God is, love and bliss and just all of that stuff. And but this is experienced to such an extreme that it's far beyond anything you can ever experience like in this physical world. And during some of these experiences, it seems like your identity is just like disintegrating, and you can actually forget like who you are, because what's actually happening is you're remembering who you truly are as a spiritual
Mm-hmm.
being. And you're remembering who you were before this life. And as you access these higher dimensions, you experience the fact that like these are actually like um, your true home. It's like you came from these higher levels, and it's kind of like we come down here to this lower dimension to get this experience and this unique opportunity of learning for the purpose of spiritual evolution, because what you experience in these higher dimensions is essentially like heaven, just constant bliss. And the thing is, like, there isn't a lot of learning that can come from that, you know even though it's such an incredible experience. Like, learning comes from challenges and hardships and things like that. So that's essentially why we're here down in this physical world, for the time being. But yeah, to answer your question, you experience God, right? And you experience your connection with all of consciousness. And there's also something called the higher self. And the higher self is who we are as um, conscious spiritual beings, like at the highest level of our current state of evolution, I guess you can say. And so who we are as these physically incarnated personalities, individuals, is actually just a small aspect of a much larger entity of consciousness. And most people aren't aware of this higher level of who we are. But you experience this in these higher dimensions, and just that experience of being this higher level entity is just far beyond anything that you could ever conceive of.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. So I taking a lot of notes here. Uh, so it was something that you had said. Well, okay, so you talked about like these lower entities there, right? These shadow beings, and then there were, different beings and different beings, and then there's these higher beings. And one thing that had crossed my mind was like, what does that say about humans that we're down here at the bottom? But I guess maybe we're in these lower realms because we are these spiritual beings experiencing a physical nature right now, right? We're like in this meat suit. Um, and so I was going to ask, like, what are humans? And you touched on something that you said, like, sometimes when we're out of our body and we are back at these higher levels, we remember who we are. Do you think that we are like, are we almost like in our larval stage? Are we like, like young spirits that have to like evolve and grow and learn? Like, is this like, are we in school right now? Is that what this physical realm is? And we're supposed to learn lessons from it, things like that. What are your thoughts on any of that stuff? Like, are we star seeds? Are we like from these higher? Are we these little spirits from these higher realms?
Yeah, yeah. Um, Essentially, this experience, this system of reality, the physical world, is just experienced opportunity to learn. And from my understanding, my experience, that's why we're here. And star seeds. I don't know. A lot of people put some definitions with terminology like that. I try to stay
That's
away from
true.
that.
Yeah,
I try to keep it as simple as possible. And so, yeah, like from
I'm
the
not saying from
perspective,
Mars, but
right?
yeah,
From our perspective, like me and you, just here sitting and talking, we're focused, locked into this physical world. So, from our perspective, we may seem like um, an entry level spirit, but like I said, we are actually um, a, a small portion of a much more evolved consciousness, and at this highest level that we exist as consciousness, this higher self, uh, what you experience, um, what it's like to exist at this higher level, and with this comes all of this like knowledge and insight and understanding that it's really hard to actually take that back like into this level of reality and kind of reintegrate that experience like fully. And so from these experiences, a lot of times there's kind of like a shadow of it that you can't quite put your finger on, but like in the experience, like there's almost like this, it's more than even just an intuition, but just like a state of knowing, like like you have these revelations, um, and you experience this elation and bliss that comes from having this higher level of knowledge and evolution. And it seems like when we're back in the body, we're blocked off from that, and that's essentially by design.
how much of that can you take back with you? Do you remember? Do you forget a lot of like knowledge and wisdom that you receive from these higher entity beings, or do you feel like you carry a lot of it back with you?
Yeah, a lot of it seems like it's kind of
Not
like,
meant for this world.
yeah, it's somewhere in this like this deep recess of my mind that I just can't access, but it's there. It's like it's there. But some things you do take back, particularly things that we can understand using physical concepts and our past experiences here, uh, you know, in this world, because that's essentially how we make sense of anything, from our past experiences here, and kind of so things that you do take back, that I've taken back from these higher level experiences, are things like the fact that um, we are these actually enormous entities of consciousness, and we're kind of um, probes in a sense, like you and I, everyone, we're just probes for this higher entity. Consider the higher entity like, I don't know, some kind of organization. Organization consists of of many agents, and we're these agents, you know, coming into this world for a particular purpose to bring back what we bring back. And you know, other things like, you do remember the states of bliss and unification, and you know, insights such as, you know, there's a God, like I have a higher self, like I'm one with all of creation. Like in these experiences, that kind of stuff, you can bring back. And you know, other things such as, when you're at the level of the higher self, you experience the fact that you are just one particular incarnation of this higher self, but there are many, many others. And it's not so much like a reincarnation where we die and then we're born into a new body, but the higher self, it's almost like a simultaneous process that, you know, from this highest level that it exists at, it's essentially beyond time. So it's not like a linear event, right? So from this level, it sends these probes into all different places and times throughout history to have experiences, to accumulate this knowledge and learning and experience. And so you experience the fact that, well, I'm also this other person. Like, and when you're at the level of the higher self, you're all one. It's all one consciousness. Even these other completely different individuals with their own individual lives. You know, on this level of the physical world, it seems like we're completely separate people, but at this highest level, we are one. And it's, yeah, it's truly incredible.
Interesting, man. So I mean that man that did a lot. So I'm trying to think now because like I was thinking about like an individual like an individual's journey, right? Because you had mentioned reincarnation. You'd mentioned that like past lives and things like that. So your spirit had been here before, maybe inhabiting a different meat suit, something like that, right? So I sometimes think about like life being like you have to keep repeating these lessons, I guess, until you've learned like whatever you're supposed to be here for. But you were saying that we are almost like probes from this higher collective like God entity, and so we're down here like accumulating knowledge and things like that. So is it almost more like something like an akashic record, like that? Maybe that's what God is, like this consciousness of like all these different experiences and different thoughts and beliefs and ideas, and that's what we're doing here. We're like adding to that collective. Like there's no time, so they've just sent us out to this. So that's an interesting thought. Why are do we periodically join the collective and then come back down, and then join the collective and come back down, and so we just happen to be probes at the moment? Is it something like that, or like what are your thoughts on any of that?
Mm-hmm.
It's
Well,
a big question.
the idea of kind of joining the collective and then coming back down. I assume you mean coming back down like into a new
Here
body
to a
for
new body,
a
yeah.
new life, and that would be more along the lines of, I think, the typical reincarnation where, you know, you die and then you're born into a new body, and that
Mm-hmm.
hasn't been my experience. And I
Okay.
mentioned before, you know, having revelations from these entities about like a past life or
Yeah.
another life. Well, this one particular experience, um, it wasn't actually a past life. It was, okay. I'll explain the experience. This entity, I was with this entity. I was out of my body, and it was essentially some kind of alien. And this telepathic link opened between us, and I received this download of knowledge and memories and past experience. Well, not past experience even, but experience. And it was revealed to me that in another life, but it wasn't a past life. It's a like a simultaneous life. Like I'm concurrently living multiple lives, and like I mentioned, um, essentially it's connected through the higher self, right? So another aspect of myself, which you can consider to be the higher self, um, is having another life in another system of reality as this alien. So like in another life, I am this alien, and not only that, but the entity that was with me, that was revealing this stuff to me, um, was very very close to me. I experienced this bond, and we had this relationship that was so strong and powerful. And then yeah, so I experienced all these memories from this other life as this other entity. It was such an unusual experience. But then this being came up to me, just approached me, and wrapped its arms around me, and I experienced like this explosion of bliss from like inside my chest, and it just exploded through my entire being, and it was just such an incredible experience. And yeah, so that wasn't like a past life that I had before this one. It's like they're happening at the same time at this higher level.
Interesting. Okay. So do you have any thoughts about reincarnation? Do you think that we got a one go here? Is this a YOLO?
Well, I think it's possible that that we could come back, but I don't think it's necessarily like a requirement. I think it depends on the individual's you know their needs in terms of what kind of growth and learning they still need. And yeah, I've done a lot of research, beyond my own personal experiences, and I've heard certain researchers, certain explorers, um, they say that we don't come back personally. We essentially continue into higher and higher dimensions until we reintegrate with the higher self. And
Mm.
and the idea of coming back, um, is just unnecessary because we actually share the experience with all of these other incarnations of the higher self. And and so there's actually no need, because once we get into these higher levels, it's all one, right? And so um, it's just totally unnecessary. But I've heard others say, we have the choice, and the Buddhist line of thought is like, this is just the way it is. You're reborn against your will. It's just the nature of things. That I don't agree with.
Mm. Okay, that's curious. Yeah, that's interesting. So, what if you're a bastard? What if you're a real bad guy? What if you're Hitler? Does he get to keep climbing up the realms, or does he get sent to a? Is there lower frequencies than where we're at? You said this is the base, but are there lower frequencies? Are there lower levels? Is there, or is there? Okay, another side of this question could be: is there actually anything that is good or evil? Like, is it all because it's all one? Like, is that just another experience, and that's just another is there? And if we are just like spiritual beings inside of a flesh suit, is it so bad? I mean, this is a horrible question, but like, is it terrible if I kill another person because I'm just liberating them from their flesh suit? Like, I don't know. What are your thoughts on any of that? Like, is
Yeah.
there good and evil? Is there lower levels? I guess is what I'm asking. And are you like cosmically punished for being a bad person, or is there
Mhm.
even such thing as a bad person? So
Sure.
anyway, so that's a lot. But tell me what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I believe in good and evil, in morality, and I think it's kind of ingrained into a deep level of who we are, where we essentially already have a notion of that before even being like educated about it. It's almost like a intuitive type thing. But um, yeah, you kind of pointed at a lot of different things there. So let's go with, in terms of being a bad person. Well, what happens? Well, um, like I mentioned, the state and the quality of your consciousness will essentially dictate um, where you go when you die, right? And it also, it also just dictates where you go when you have an out of body experience, because in that state you're essentially uh, just consciousness, and your consciousness will attune to whatever level it resonates with. So if your consciousness is at this lower frequency, then you will resonate with a lower dimension of reality. And so it's almost like a like attracts like type situation. And so um, in whatever particular reality you are attuned with, well, you'll also be, uh, in this reality with other individuals who are also attuned with that same level of energy. And so consider someone like Hitler. Well, I would imagine he's like the lowest of the low, but um, he's he's going to be surrounded by other insane evil people, and that's going to be his reality in these higher dimensions. Okay, you asked something about that too. I'll get to that in a second. And but so imagine you're in this, you're locked into this realm with all these evil people, and that's all there is. And so who are they going to commit their evil acts upon? Well, one another. And so I would consider that hell, and so in terms of what's going to happen, well, um, you know in order to break free from any particular level, or to um, gain access to higher and higher dimensions, well, th- this comes from being able to accelerate your own level of consciousness to a higher level. And so what that requires, there are certain qualities that correspond with these different levels. So like the highest levels, they correspond with like love and compassion and these higher states of being. And the opposite is true with the lower realms, hatred and fear and all these negative emotions, right? And and so you know it's typically really difficult for someone who has been in this lower state for so long to suddenly just break free from that and be like, all right, now I'm going to experience love, and I'm going to have compassion for these people. So you know in order for them to move beyond that lower level, that's essentially what it would take. Now, in terms of like these dimensions being like lower than the physical, well, the physical dimension is essentially the densest um, level, right? And so you can consider the lower and the higher dimensions in non-physical reality. Well, by definition, they exist like higher on the spectrum simply because they lack this physical density. So the state of their energy and the vibration which they attune to is going to be higher, like lighter. They don't have this physicality, but yeah, these lower dimensions, you can consider them essentially hell levels, and the higher ones, they can be considered heaven just because they have these qualities and characteristics that we associate with these terms.
Interesting, man. So, what are your thoughts on? Okay, so I have several questions. So, what are your thoughts on ghosts? Is that essentially that's us, right? I guess like us in a higher realm. Like, so let's say I'm a real bastard. Let's again, we can use Hitler as an example. Do you think that he is one of those shadow entities, like one of these just low, dumb, dark, evil things that just kind of just sit there? And just they've lost all humanity. There's not much thought to them. They're just their darkness is what's left. They're kind of like a husk.
Well, I believe a ghost is essentially a person who has some kind of strong attachment to this physical world, and so when they die, they cling on to that, and they're not able um, to move into higher levels. They're stuck at the dimensions that are like just slightly above this physical world. So it's essentially like I said, like these lower astral realms appear to be essentially duplicates of the physical world, and they're so attached that they stay at this lower dimensional level. And so I think it's not necessarily a matter of like being a bad person, but it's more about um, having some kind of really strong attachment, and this is kind of holding them as close to the physical dimension as possible. And so some people say they have a ghost sighting, and it could be some type of maybe bleed through experience where these ghosts, these deceased humans, are so close to the physical dimension. They're essentially like trying to get back into it because that they want to be here for some reason. And that may be it. I've had experiences with ghosts over the years, and I had this one experience where I moved. My wife and I had moved into a condominium, and the previous owner of this place had recently died. It was an old lady, and I woke up one night, and I was in like a deep meditative state, and I kind of shifted into the astral dimension, and all of a sudden there's this ghost lady, and so I'm laying on my back, and she's essentially parallel to me, like hovering over me, her face like up in my face, and she was just disgusting looking. Like she looked transparent, like a typical ghost, um, but just her physical features were just disgusting, like rotted flesh and uh, typical nasty horror ghost appearance. And and I realized that there was some kind of um, energetic sensation on my side, and I looked down, and it was like this stream of energy was like entering my body from this ghost lady, like she was almost like sucking energy from me. And she became aware that I was aware of her, and she opened her mouth and she just let out this screech, and it was really terrifying. And I kind of snapped out of it and went back into my body. And and later I made this connection, like we're living in this condo apartment where this lady, who knows how long she lived there for, she had just died. And we had other experiences in that same place where my wife would wake up with hand marks on her arms, like someone had been squeezing her arms for like an extended period of time, these red hand marks, and we had no explanation of how they got there. But it wasn't my hands, it wasn't her hands. And we had other unusual experiences like that, and we put the pieces together, and it seemed likely that this could be some kind of a ghost haunting situation.
Interesting, man. So I've got just a few more questions for you because I know we're getting close on your time there. Um, so one thing I was going to say is like when you saw this lady and this gross, disgusting, rotting corpse was on top of you, like absorbing your energy, have you discovered anything that you could use to defend yourself while you're in these realms? Are there like psychic weapons? Can you like push her away using like energy or higher like frequency? Is there anything that you found that like can someone defend themselves in those realms?
Yeah, actually, what you just mentioned is pretty much it. Higher frequency. And so what I learned was that if I was able to cultivate a higher level of energy, which I would manifest through love. Essentially, I would cultivate this energy of love within me, and I would project that out. And what this would do is it wouldn't repel whatever entity I was encountering, but it would actually shift me into a higher dimension, which was beyond whatever lower level entity I was encountering. And so it's essentially a way of removing you from that situation rather than removing that entity from from you.
Gotcha. Okay. Another, just on top of that, just because it just occurred to me, it was like, if you had stayed there and let her feed off of you, what do you think could have happened?
Well, I've had experiences where I was essentially attacked by some kind of entity while out of my body, and that resulted in a physical injury. And the less serious experiences would essentially just be a feeling of pain in my body,
Mm,
and for um, different periods of times. Usually like the less extreme um, cases. Yeah, let's say I would be grabbed by some malevolent entity while out of my body. Well, in that experience, while out of body, I would feel strong, deep pain in my astral body, and I would get back into my physical body, and I would still feel that pain. The pain would be in my physical body, the same exact place, for let's say a couple minutes. But like a more extreme case, like this one time, I was attacked by this entity, and it latched onto my neck, and it began sucking energy out of my neck. And this time it was kind of hard to break free. It was like it seemed to be a pretty powerful entity. But I got back into my body, and the next day, um, my neck essentially seized up at the same exact place. And I've had neck strains every now and then over the years. Sometimes you wake up in a weird position, and you can't move your head because the muscle is strained. Well, it was like that times like 100. It was the worst pain I had ever experienced um, from any kind of neck injury, and there was no reason for it, um, other than the fact that I had this encounter while I was out of my body, and the same side of my neck, the same place. That's where the injury happened, and typically a neck strain, let's say from going to the gym or sleeping in a weird position, it would bother me for a day or two. But this was like an entire week, and it was a pain that was so much stronger than anything I'd experienced from that kind of injury before, and it was just a direct correlation with that. And just other experiences of experiencing physical pain resulting in the same place from some kind of encounter while out of my body. It was clear to me there's something happening there. And so, yeah, I always recommend people, be cautious, and try to stay away from like unknown entities. Definitely don't like call out to entities, especially just blindly. I've had experiences where I'll make the request, come take me out of my body, and I'll be taken out of my body, but it's not by a benevolent entity. It's like during some of these experiences, they hurt me in the same way. Like they'll grab me by my legs and pull me out of my body, and where they're grabbing me, I feel pain, like real pain.
mm.
And yeah, things like that. Got to be on the lookout, and yeah, just be smart about it.
Gotcha. I got two more questions for you. One, I guess, is here. So when it comes to these psychic beings and their connection with, so they're at these higher realms and different things, but people can experience them, like you're saying, like that thing that was on your neck sounds like a vampire to me. That's that idea there. So when people, okay, so how do people experience these things? So like when people say they have like a sighting for, like, let's say Bigfoot, or let's say they have a sighting for an alien, are these other higher dimensional beings that they're seeing, and can these higher dimensional beings come down to our level and affect us while we're at this physical level? Like could like, let's say somebody has like some debilitating disease, could that be a being affecting them? Like,
Hmm.
what are your
Yeah,
thoughts on any of that in the physical
I, I
realm?
I think it's possible. I mean, from my own experience, I've experienced the fact that the physical body can be affected from these higher levels of reality. So yeah, I definitely think that's the case. I mean, in terms of Bigfoot sightings and aliens, I think these could be physical beings. You know, the fact that I've had so many experiences with aliens out of my body, well, I never expected that before. I had always thought that aliens were just physical beings, you know, from other planets or whatever. Um, and and so the fact is they do exist and operate in higher dimensions. Um, Now, the question of whether they're also physical beings, well, that seems likely just because of so many experiences of other people being physically abducted or having physical encounters. So it seems likely that they're able to operate in multiple levels of reality.
That's interesting. Yeah, because I mean the whole thought right now with aliens has kind of shifted, and Bigfoot is now shifting too to these thoughts that these creatures could be interdimensional. And so my whole thought is like maybe because like there's those people that experience like a lapse of time or they saw a bright light and then they remember what happened later and things like that. Oh, maybe they shifted out of their body and didn't realize it, something like that. Or they could be at the very next level where they could see some of these beings and not know. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's an interesting thought. It's
Yeah, well, actually, a lot of alien abduction reports do seem to be actually astral projection
mhm.
related experiences. A lot of them will report being paralyzed, like sleep paralysis, and then they'll see some kind of aliens in their room. Maybe they'll experience kind of being taken from their bed, maybe like flying through the roof, or being taken in some way by these entities. And the thing is, if you don't have experience um, in these other states of consciousness, astral projection, and well, the thing is, during these experiences, you're fully lucid. You know, it's no different from being aware of this physical world. You have that same level of consciousness, and so it's very possible to be out of your body and not be aware of being out of your body. Um, and so I think a lot of these experiences, these people are being taken out of their bodies, but they don't realize it because everything else about the experience, um, you know, seems the same in terms of their perception and the level of awareness they have. They just think that they're being abducted into a spaceship in the physical world, when in reality they are actually being taken into another dimension of reality.
Interesting, man. So my very last question for you was: have you had any experience with psychedelics? Do you think that when people are taking psychedelics, because they describe something like people that take DMT or something or ayahuasca, they'll describe these like machine elves, they'll describe these like entities, these beings. Do you think that this is like something that like without consciously doing it, you're like physically making yourself explore these other realms? Are Is this something similar that they're experiencing, or are they something completely different in your opinion?
Yeah, I prefer to have these experiences naturally, just because you have complete control over them, in the sense that if you're going to take some kind of psychedelic, well, you can't really pull out of that experience until the chemicals fade out of your system. And with the out of body experience, you can essentially abort ship at any time. And so I always um, have preferred the natural route. But yeah, I do think that through certain drugs and psychedelics, you can tap into real um, valid dimensions of reality beyond the physical world. And there's so many reports of just elements of these experiences that are so similar between so many different people who haven't even communicated with one another. It just seems likely that there's there's something real happening during these experiences.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I've had some interesting experiences myself. Never done the DMT or the ayahuasca yet. I've done my weight in psilocybin. I've had some pretty amazing experiences. Uh, well, Vince, this was a lot of fun. This was really interesting. Thank you for joining me and answering all my crazy questions. I probably ask you different questions than more serious folks. I don't know. But I hope you had a good time too. And do you want to tell our audience again one more time where they can find you and all that good stuff?
Yeah, definitely. Um, you can find my book on Amazon.com. I'm sure we can link it in the description. And
Yep.
if you want to reach out to me personally, you can find me on social media, Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff. My username is Vincent Field Author, just one word. And I'm actually developing a video series right now um, with instructional lessons, techniques and methods that you can use to induce these experiences yourself. And all that is also provided in my book. But I also wanted to provide this means of sharing this information with people who maybe aren't able to buy my book. And so yeah, the videos, you can find them on my social media accounts. So yeah, get in touch with me if you ever have any questions, you need some help with something related to this. I'd be happy to help.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for coming on.
Hey, thank you.